Hey guys, tonight we're diving into velvet and shadows. Into rooms where chandeliers glitter so hard they almost blind you, but somehow they never quite hide the secrets beneath. These were the parties where everyone pretended to be virtuous, while half the room was planning how to sneak away with someone else's spouse. Honestly, if you were thrown into a Victorian ball, you probably wouldn't last 10 minutes. The corsets alone would knock you out. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And please, drop a comment with where and when you're listening. It means the world to me to know that someone in London, New York, or maybe even a tiny village in the Alps is drifting off to sleep because I stayed up far too late weaving these stories. Those comments are what keep me going. It's a strange kind of fuel. But it works now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ballroom glows like a lantern in the night. Velvet drapes and crystal chandeliers casting a shimmer over silk gowns. Laughter spills across the floor, but it's the kind of laughter that hides sharp teeth. Everywhere you look, masks, gleam lace, satin, feathers all, pretending to be playful while really serving as perfect cover for things no one dares name aloud. You notice a woman in sapphire silk slip away from the dance floor. Her mask tilts just slightly, not enough to reveal her face, but enough for you to see the flush beneath. She disappears through a side door, and a few moments later, a man in uniform follows, except it isn't her husband. It's her husband's closest ally, the very man who'd spent the last hour toasting loyalty and honor. The kind of moment where, if someone pushed the wrong door open, the newspapers could fill their pages for a month. Triggy, Kaine, Ma, Elpt, Ra, Tha Hung, Lochen, Yong, Xc, Hai. This was the delicious paradox of Victorian high life. Everyone claimed to uphold strict morality, while the same drawing rooms echoed with whispered promises. The hypocrisy wasn't subtle, it was practically the wallpaper. You couldn't step into a ballroom without stepping straight into a web of hidden attachments. Imagine a masquerade ball today where half the guests are politicians, and you'll understand the tension. Everyone's smiling for the portraits, while silently panicking that the wrong pair of eyes might be watching. A servant brushes past carrying champagne, but his eyes don't miss a thing. He sees the side door close, hears the faint giggle muffled by velvet curtains. Servants with the original gossip columns, except they didn't need printing presses. A single whispered story in a servants' hall could travel across the city by sunrise. And sometimes, those whispers found their way into scandal sheets. The 19th century version of tabloid magazines, except with more flowery fonts. One gentleman, trying too hard to look casual, slips a folded note into his dance partner's glove. It looks innocent, but every soul in the room knows letters are bombs waiting to explode. A love note in the wrong hands meant blackmail, exile, or worse. You think deleting texts is stressful? Try living in fear that your butler might iron your jacket and find a crumpled declaration of forbidden passion in the pocket. Historians still argue whether society truly believed its own moral codes, or whether the codes were just a theatrical backdrop for a game everyone was secretly playing. What is clear is that these masks weren't costumes. They were licenses. Licenses to flirt too boldly, to vanish into side corridors, to pretend you mistook someone else's hand for your husband's because, well, you couldn't see clearly through lace. And the danger wasn't just whispers. Entire families teetered on these secrets. A single misstep, a single mask slipping too far, and wealth, status, even political alliances could unravel overnight. Tonight's velvet curtain could be tomorrow's courtroom drama. That's the thrill. You can feel it in the air, like static before a storm. Everyone in this ballroom knows that behind every laugh there is a risk. Behind every glance there is a blade. The musicians play on, pretending not to notice, but even their violins seem to strain under the tension. You watch as the sapphire silk lady and her uniformed companion return, masks perfectly in place, laughter rehearsed. And yet, one servant, still carrying that tray of champagne, has already stored the memory away. Maybe he'll keep it. Maybe he'll sell it. Maybe by next week, all of London will be buzzing. That's the cruel beauty of velvet masks. They don't just cover faces. They hold entire lives in balance, poised between secrecy and disaster. And as you stand here at the edge of the ballroom, you realize you're not just witnessing a party. You're standing in the middle of a minefield disguised as elegance, and as the music from that glittering ballroom still echoes in your head, you notice something odd. Those smiles behind velvet masks aren't just hiding faces, they're hiding words. Words scribbled in the dark, folded into envelopes, and sealed with wax so fragile that even time holds its breath. Because if the wrong hands ever pry them open, no society doesn't just whisper, it roars. You're standing at the edge of a writing desk, the surface littered with quills, ink pots, and papers so fine it feels more expensive than your rent. A lady, cheeks flushed from the dance floor, leans forward to write by candlelight. Her gloved hand trembles as she dips the quill. She could be penning the grandest love poem of the age, or she could be building her own gallows with every stroke of ink. You can't tell yet. That's the fun. The thing about these love letters is that they start sweet, like a spoonful of sugar. Forever yours, my heart belongs to you. Meet me where the roses climb. Romantic, right? Until you remember the roses climb the wall of her husband's garden, and the man she's writing to isn't her husband. Oops if. You've ever sent a risky text at 2 a.m. and immediately regretted it. Congratulations, you've just time traveled. Victorian mistresses invented the oops, wrong person long before you did. Except they couldn't delete. No blue check marks, no unsend for everyone. Once you send that letter, it's a ticking time bomb wrapped in ribbon. Some letters were so flowery you'd think the paper would wilt from the sheer weight of metaphors. A nobleman might declare that his soul is burning like the eternal flame of Olympus, and his mistress might politely nod, even though she knows he once fainted trying to open a window. Passion in ink, weakness in practice. Historians still argue whether half of these letters were genuine devotion or just very expensive foreplay written in cursive. But here's the catch: paper keeps secrets badly. Servants handled the letters. Couriers slipped them through the city like veins pumping scandal instead of blood. And sometimes the wrong maid peeked, or the wrong butler delivered to the wrong hand. Imagine your intimate words, your clumsy pet names, read aloud in a drawing room by the wife of the man you wrote to. Yes, that happened. A letter once got mixed into the household bills. Imagine opening an envelope expecting 2 shillings for coal, and instead finding "I dream of the curve of your neck." Tea was spilled. Literally, there's an especially odd fact. Did you know people sometimes perfumed their letters? They dabbed rosewater or lavender along the folds. Sounds romantic, right? Except it made the letters impossible to hide. You could sniff out an affair from halfway across the room. One husband wrote in his diary that he smelled betrayal before he saw it, which is both tragic and kind of funny, like a bloodhound for infidelity. You lean closer to the candle. The wax seals glow like tiny suns, daring someone to break them. And once broken, words become weapons. In more than one trial, these letters were hauled into court as damning evidence. Whole reputations collapsed, not because someone was caught in the act, but because someone was caught in the adjectives. It's a strange comfort, isn't it? Knowing that even the mighty Victorians ruined their lives with bad texting habits, just slower, with more ink stains. The funniest part. Half the time, people tried to destroy these letters, but failed. They meant to burn them in the fireplace, but couldn't quite do it. The words felt too pretty to kill. So they tucked them into boxes, under floorboards, between mattress seams. And guess what? Centuries later, people like me read them out loud to you while you're falling asleep. Romance, tragedy, and just a little second-hand embarrassment. There's one story of a maid who discovered a bundle of letters and didn't say a word for years, until the right bidder came along. That bundle bought her a new life in the countryside. Imagine that. One woman's shame became another woman's retirement plan. Letters as currency, gossip as gold. You can almost hear the scratching of the quill, every stroke laying another coin on the table. You breathe in, feel the weight of those folded papers, as though you're the one holding them now. Would you keep them or burn them? Be honest, you'd keep them. Everyone does. Humans can't resist the drama of their own undoing, and the candles flicker. The dance floor behind you is silent now, but the curtains sway gently, like they've been eavesdropping all along. Because the truth is, walls listen, fabrics whisper, and nothing in these houses stays secret for long. The curtains breathe with you. You notice it now, how the heavy velvet sways, even though the windows are shut. It's as if the fabric itself has been listening, storing every sigh, every giggle, every guilty line of ink that floated across this house. Those letters you just touched, they never really stayed hidden. The walls have ears, yes, but the curtains gossip. You step closer. The folds ripple in the dim glow, shadows shifting like sly mouths opening and closing. Imagine leaning in to whisper sweet nothings, thinking no one could hear, only to realize later the servants had heard everything through thin plaster, and the curtains carried the echoes down the hall. That's how secrets worked here. Not shouted, not confessed, just absorbed into fabric until the right breeze pushed them out. There's a reason plays in the theatre always begin with curtains rising, because behind them the real show has already started. In these Victorian drawing rooms, drama didn't wait for a stage, it bloomed behind brocade. You'd swear the drapery was stitched not just with thread, but with the size of every scandal it concealed. And once in a while, when someone tugged the fabric aside, out spilled whispers louder than applause. Picture a gentleman slipping in after midnight, careful as a thief. He believes the house is asleep, but a curtain rustles as he passes, and you feel it. The whole building knows. His boots leave no mark, his gloves hush the doorknob, yet the swaying fabric seems to announce him anyway. By morning, gossip spreads faster than coal smoke. Who started it? No one ever knows. But the drapery remembers. A curious thing. Many Victorians actually lined their curtains with thicker fabric, not just for warmth, but to muffle conversation. It didn't work. Servants stood outside with trays, ears tilted just enough to catch the melody of voices, and they didn't need every word. A pause too long, a giggle too sharp. Silence where there should have been laughter, it was enough to weave a whole story. People today snoop through browser history. Back then, they just listened through curtains. Same sport, different tools. Historians still bicker over one famous case. A duchess accused of betrayal because a maid claimed she heard two shadows talking behind the curtains. To shadows, mind you, not to people. Yet that was enough to spark trial, pamphlets, and the ruin of a family name. All because fabric moved at the wrong moment. Imagine your entire life derailed not by action, not by confession, but by drapery with stage fright. And it's funny, isn't it? How easily people trust walls, doors, locks, never realizing the softest thing in the room might betray them first. A curtain, after all, is just a sheet of listening skin, hanging quietly, pretending to be innocent. You glance at the folds now and swear they shift when you breathe so. When you stand in this hushed room, candle guttering low, you feel it. Every word ever whispered here is still hanging in the air, caught in fabric threads like flies in a web. Letters may burn, lovers may flee, but curtains never forget, and never stay silent. You're still in that room, the curtains shivering with secrets they've swallowed. When your gaze drifts lower toward the glitter on a wrist, the sudden glint on a throat. Ah, there it is, gold. Not just decoration, but hush money disguised as beauty. You can almost hear it whisper, "Keep quiet, and I'll keep shining for you." A necklace dangles from a pale neck, heavy with more than gems. It's weighted with unspoken contracts, with nights that should have been forgotten, with promises never written on paper but carved into emeralds instead. You wonder how many scandals were bought, not with threats, not with pleas, but with a ring slipped across a finger. Gold doesn't blush, after all. Gold doesn't testify. And yet the irony, every sparkle draws eyes. That diamond brooch pinned a little too high. That ruby bracelet flashing under candlelight, people notice. They always notice. Imagine walking into a ball draped in a jewel that everyone knows you couldn't possibly afford on your own. You think they're admiring your taste, but really they're whispering, calculating, tracing back who might have purchased your silence. It worked, sometimes. A clever gift could close a mouth tighter than fear ever did. You picture a mistress sliding on her new sapphire ring, twisting it like a secret code every time she meets her benefactor's wife. And no one says a word, though everyone sees. That's the trick of its society thrived, not on ignorance, but on selective blindness. It wasn't that people didn't know. It was that they pretended not to, because pretending was more entertaining. But gifts cut both ways. A jewel that once secured loyalty could, in the wrong hands, become evidence. Think of it, a scandal splashed across whispers in Mayfair because someone recognized a necklace. Oh, isn't that the one Lord So-and-so had commissioned? Curious, it now sits on her throat. Suddenly, what was meant to silence becomes an amplifier. The louder the jewel shines, the sharper the gossip cuts. You might laugh, but even now the logic survives. Today, it's not rubies, it's handbags, cars, Instagram trips that shout louder than any confession. And just like then, everyone pretends not to notice, while noticing everything. Humanity hasn't changed much. Only the receipts did. One lesser-known twist. Sometimes, the jewels themselves spoke louder than their wearers. Craftsmen etched initials or secret symbols into the design. Lovers tucked tiny messages in engravings only they could read. Romantic, perhaps. Dangerous, Absolutely. A bracelet may look like any other until someone tilts it toward the light ando. Dear, there's an inscription declaring love eternal. Eternal, maybe, but not discreet. Historians still quarrel about whether these gifts of silence were acts of affection or calculated bribes. Was the emerald necklace truly given out of passion or out of panic? The truth, as always, lies tangled somewhere in between. A mistress might love the man who offered it, but she surely loved the weight of security it brought as well. Love is complicated. Gold makes it messier. There's an image that stays with you. A woman at her vanity, fingertips brushing over pearls, each bead a little story of compromise. Her reflection looks back knowingly, a faint smile curling as though she and the jewels share an inside joke. And you can almost hear her thinking, if these walls speak, I'll outshine them. If these letters burn, I'll wear their ashes around my neck. But the cruel part of silence bought with gold is how short it lasts. Shiny things lose their luster. Gossip doesn't. The same mistress who held her tongue for a necklace today might trade her story for something shinier tomorrow. And when she does, the jewels don't vanish. They remain physical proof of everything unsaid, like receipts left behind after the party ends. You can see it now, at some dinner party. The wife of a nobleman notices a sparkling pendant on another woman's breast. She recognizes it. She remembers the commission. Her wineglass stills in mid-air, and suddenly the whole room tilts toward her silence. What does she do? Pretend again, or finally name the glitter for what it is? Either way, society gets its feast, so you linger by the fireplace, eyes fixed on those jewels catching firelight. They sparkle too brightly, too nervously, like guilty eyes. You realize that silence, however well paid, is never permanent. Gold muffles whispers, but only until the next breeze stirs. The curtains behind you shiver again, as though reminding you, secrets don't vanish, they just wait. And with that, you sense the next layer of the house stirring. Not the jewels, not the curtains, but the stage itself. Because sometimes, the most devastating betrayals don't happen in private, they happen in public, under chandeliers, with applause echoing loud enough to drown the gasp. And now you find yourself staring at the glow of the stage. Velvet curtains trembling as though they, too, sense the danger of what is about to unfold. A performance in Victorian London is never just about art, is it? It is politics in silk gloves, passion hidden under powdered faces, and betrayal waiting to pounce behind the applause. The chandeliers glitter overhead, dripping with wax like silent tears, and the crowd below swells in anticipation. You sit among them, pressed shoulder to shoulder with perfumed strangers, inhaling a mixture of rose oil and unwashed body czar, the true scent of society. The actress steps forward, gown heavy with sequins, her smile brighter than the lamps burning hot above her. For a moment, the audience is enchanted. Every man leans in as though he is the only one she sings to. Every woman leans back, calculating, plotting, wondering whose husband will forget his vows before intermission. You almost pity her, though one misstep, a wrong look, and she will tumble not off the stage, but into infamy. That's the thing about this glittering world. The stage giveth, and the stage taketh away. There's a story whispered in the theatre corridors. That one celebrated actor, his name is politely scrubbed from official records, once froze in the middle of a soliloquy when he caught sight of his lover in the royal box, seated beside her husband. The silence was deafening, a silence sharper than any critic's pen. Some swore he never recovered, his career evaporating faster than cheap gin in a candle flame. Was it true? Historians still bicker, of course. But the gossip lives on longer than his reputation ever did, and here you are, sitting straight-backed, pretending not to notice how your neighbor's opera glasses linger on the leading man's thighs rather than his performance. That's the theater for you. Every seat is a trap, every glance a confession, every clap of the hand a mask. You know it, they know it, yet you all keep coming back, hungry for the scandal that always slithers in behind the curtain. Let's not pretend the actors themselves are saints. Offstage, their lives are even more theatrical. Love letters exchanged in the wings, debts scribbled hastily on the back of scripts, bribes tucked discreetly into bouquets of roses. One poor soul once received a poisoned flower, whether meant for him or for the mistress he flaunted. No one can quite agree. It made headlines for a week, until something juicier like a duchess caught sneaking through a stage door shoved it aside. You see the rhythm. The city breathes in scandal, exhales indifference, and then inhales again. There's a curious little fact, though not often mentioned in polite company. The gas lamps used to light these grand stages sometimes leaked, filling backstage with a haze that blurred reality. Actors stumbled through scenes half dizzy. Audiences applauded lines slurred into nonsense, and nobody admitted the truth. Better to blame nerves than acknowledge the entire theater was essentially a slow-burn death trap. You might laugh, softly, because isn't that just fitting? A society obsessed with appearances, willing to risk suffocation just to keep the illusion alive. London applauds with one hand and sharpens its claws with the other. The stage is never only entertainment. It's a mirror polished with lies. Look again at the actress before you, eyes flashing, voice trembling with rehearsed passion. Does she sing to her audience, or to the shadowy patron rumored to be hidden in a private box, the one who paid her rent last month? And what about the critics scribbling furiously in his notebook? Do his words reflect truth, or the weight of the dinner invitation he accepted from her rival? Behind every gesture, a bargain. Behind every role, a secret. You lean back, aware that somewhere in this very room, reputations are being born, others are being butchered. The stage betrays because the stage remembers. Every gasp, every misplaced glance, every secret rendezvous in the green room has a way of crawling out into daylight. And when it does, the applause turns to laughter. The roses turn to ash, and the names etched in playbills vanish like ink left too close to the fire. The music swells, the curtain drops, and for a fleeting heartbeat the audience is united in thunderous applause. Yet you feel it, don't you? That quiver in the air, that sense that the real performance is still to come, whispered in carriages on the ride home, scribbled in tomorrow's papers, and carried like perfume in every drawing room that pretends to detest gossip even while feasting on it. And as you rise, smoothing your coat, brushing away invisible dust, you know you're not escaping the theater, you're stepping into another stage entirely. The night outside brims with shadows, and somewhere among them waits the next scandal, ready to wrap itself around the city like smoke from the gaslights that never quite go out. The carriages roll away from the theater, wheels splashing through puddles, and you trail behind the aristocrats who glide as though London's filth has sworn never to touch their boots. The street lamps flicker, casting halos around powdered wigs and polished canes. You watch, amused, because for all their elegance, These people are nothing more than players in a far grander play, one that requires no stage and never ends. The nobleman ahead of you tips his hat, smiling with teeth too white to be real, his arm locked with a woman whose jewels sparkle louder than her laugh. They pretend to be paragons of virtue, shining examples of society's best. But lean in closer. Ah, yes. You hear it, their whispers are not about charity or honor or even art. No. They are tallying debts, recounting scandals, warning one another whose name will next be dragged through the muddy columns of the morning press. Aristocrats in shadows. It sounds poetic, doesn't it? But in truth, the shadows cling to them like old perfume. You see, a title could shield a man from poverty, but never from ridicule. A single misstep, an affair gone wrong, a servant to loot slipped, an investment in the wrong ship, and suddenly that golden crest on the family carriage looks more like a painted mask. One lord, you might recall, built an entire fortune on sugar shipments from colonies overseas. When the ships ran aground, he staged a ball so extravagant the papers forgot his losses. Historians mutter still. Was it brilliant distraction or desperate denial? Either way, the chandeliers burned brighter than his ledgers. Walk a little further and peer into the drawing rooms, lit from within. There's the Duke who insists on discussing Greek philosophy while his mistress sits 2 chairs away, unacknowledged, sipping champagne bought with her own inheritance. Over there, a countess clutches her pearls as though shocked by the immorality of others, though her pearls themselves were rumored to be smuggled, unpaid for, and perhaps stolen twice. You smile, because hypocrisy never looked so fashionable. And don't be fooled by the statues of marble in their gardens, either. Those stone gods were often shipped half-broken, patched hastily by local craftsmen, then displayed proudly as if Apollo himself had just stepped off the ship in perfect condition. Behind the facade of refinement lies a constant scramble, a need to keep the mask intact. What a delightful irony! The higher the title, the heavier the burden of lies. A lesser-known whisper follows you through these halls. Some aristocrats, eager to appear cultured, paid writers to forge ancient family histories. Entire genealogies were invented, tracing noble bloodlines back to warriors or saints who never existed. Imagine a duke bragging at supper that his great-great-grandfather fought alongside Richard the Lionheart, while the poor scribe who invented the tale snickers into his soup somewhere across town. And here is where it becomes deliciously absurd. Picture a lavish supper, chandeliers dripping wax, the air thick with roasted pheasant and cigar smoke. A baron stands to toast the queen, but his knees buckle not from loyalty, but from too much brandy. The room chuckles politely, then whispers viciously the moment he collapses back into his chair. Tomorrow, of course, the scandal is embroidered. Some say he fainted from guilt. Others claim a duel gone wrong left him weak. And one particularly gleeful gossip swears his wig slipped and nearly drowned in the gravy. Truth. Who needs truth when the lies are so much more entertaining? And yet, here you are, weaving among them, noting how their jewels glint but their eyes dart nervously. Every smile is measured, every laugh rehearsed, every silence calculated. They are prisoners of their own shadows, terrified not of poverty, but of exposure. You almost pity them almost. The irony is sharp, though. These grand houses, these titles, this endless parade of masquerades, it all depends on silence. A silence bought, bargained, or begged for. But silence has a way of cracking, like old plaster under damp. And when it cracks, The shadows spread faster than any candle can chase them away. You step back into the night, coat drawn tight, and the wind carries with it a truth you cannot unhear. Nobility is only ever noble until someone decides to laugh. And laughter, once loosed, cannot be chained again. The applause still echoes in your ears as you leave the theater. But the sound fades quickly once the doors close behind you. Outside, the air feels different, colder, hungrier. The crowd disperses, and the actors vanish into their shabby quarters. But the aristocrats, they glide into carriages polished until they shine like black mirrors. You follow, drawn to the glow of lanterns that bob through the mist, and realize the real performance is only beginning now. In the dark between gaslights, their laughter carries over the clatter of hooves. Smooth and effortless, though you know how much strain it takes to make mirth sound so natural. A viscount steps from his carriage, his cloak spilling around him like ink. His wife trails behind, a smile fixed so tightly you can almost hear it creak. They pause beneath a lamplight, and you sense the unspoken agreement play the part. Never falter, for the city is always watching. You've seen masks before, velvet and jeweled, but here the masks are made of titles. A duke can stumble in brandy, yet the morning papers will call it pensive reflection. A countess can flirt with someone not her husband, and society will sigh, how continental. But let a tradesman misstep, and suddenly it is shame, scandal, ruin. The higher the title, the gentler the vocabulary. Such generosity, isn't it? Step closer now. Peer through the glowing windows of their houses. See that supper table gleaming under dripping chandeliers, silver polished until it reflects faces twice over. The guests speak of politics and poetry, of faith and empire, all while servants slip silently behind them, carrying more truth in their eyes than the entire room combined. For truth isn't welcome here, only the appearance of it. One gentleman adjusts his cravat, boasting of his family's proud lineage. You smile because you know the secret. Much of that lineage was invented. Whole genealogies written by hired scribes, tracing noble roots back to medieval knights who never swung a sword. Imagine the irony paying for ancestors the way others buy furniture. Yet it worked. The guests nod, impressed, sipping their wine as though the lie tastes finer than the vintage. In a corner, a baron swells with pride, recalling his recent ball. It was the talk of London, he declares. And indeed it was lavish, glittering, full of candles that burned through the night. But you also know what the baron wanted forgotten. The ships he invested in never returned, the fortunes lost at sea. Some say the ball was distraction, a calculated sparkle to blind society to his collapse. Others insist it was sheer denial, an extravagant swan song for a drowning man. Historians still murmur about it, as though the truth remains locked somewhere between the spilled champagne and the melted wax. Watch the countess across the table now. She feigns shock at the impropriety of others, fingers tightening around a string of pearls. Yet rumor insists those pearls were smuggled, bought cheap, and possibly stolen before they found her neck. Her gasp may be real, but her virtue, as borrowed as her jewelry. And oh, the supper itself pheasant, roasted, puddings, sculpted, every dish designed to impress. But the most delicious morsels aren't served on plates. They're whispered between courses, savored with sly glances. A laugh lingers too long. Silence stretches where speech should be. These are the true banquets, feasting on scandal while pretending to choke politely on roast goose. The absurdity finds its height when a baron rises, glass in hand, to toast the queen. His words flow, but so does the brandy. Halfway through, his knees betray him. He slumps back into his chair, wig tilting precariously until it nearly dips into the gravy. The table ripples with laughter disguised as coughs. By morning, the story has already transformed. Some say the baron fainted from guilt. Others claim a dual wound reopened. One wag swears the wig drowned, and the butler fished it out like a soggy biscuit. The truth scarcely matters. What matters is the echo, the performance the aristocrats cannot control, and you, standing quietly, can't help but marvel. These people, draped in silk and honor, spend their lives not living but rehearsing. Each word, each gesture, each pause is weighed against the risk of ridicule. They are prisoners of shadow, gilded cages lined with brocade. The irony? They mock the actors on stage, yet live the greatest theater themselves. Step outside again into the misty night. Behind you, the chandeliers blaze, desperate to hold back darkness. Ahead, the city yawns, indifferent, and the thought lingers, sharp and cold. Nobility is only ever noble until laughter strips the varnish away. The shadows cling tightly to their titles, but shadows cannot keep secrets forever. And just when you think the show ends with chandeliers flickering above the aristocrats, you notice the real audience has been standing the whole time. They are the quiet ones, the hands holding trays steady, the feet moving without sound. The servants, they glide in shadows, heads bent low, yet their eyes absorb more than every guest combined. You imagine them carrying not just silver, but keys to rooms, keys to whispers, keys to reputations that tremble like candles in a draught. Think of it, a butler polishing boots has more access to a duke's secrets than the duke's own wife. A maid folding sheets knows who slept in which bed long after midnight. They are the invisible record keepers, the human journals nobody wants written. You lean closer, watching a housemaid pour wine. Her face shows nothing, but you swear the tilt of the bottle slows at a particularly scandalous line, as though she's savoring every word to repeat later. It's almost comical, lords and ladies rehearsing their lines like trained actors, forgetting entirely that the stagehands hear every muffled cue. You picture an earl whispering sweet nothings, only to be betrayed by the squeak of bed springs and the muffled laugh of a chambermaid behind the door. Today, people worry about their texts being Back then, it was the gardener leaning too close while trimming roses, or the coachman overhearing from the driver's seat. Screenshots expire. Gossip doesn't. One curious detail about the Victorian world: many great houses required servants to wear felt-soled shoes, so they could move silently. How ironic, then, that their silence only made them better collectors of secrets. They became shadows with memories, sliding along corridors like ghosts. And unlike ghosts, these shadows sometimes spoke. Not loudly, never openly, just enough to tilt the balance of power with a single accidental murmur. You recall one case whispered across London drawing rooms. A butler who exposed his master's affair not out of morality, but because he was denied a raise. Petty revenge dressed up as righteousness. The affair itself, hardly surprising, but the betrayal from below sent ripples through high society, because if one servant could topple a lord, then no velvet curtain, no pearl necklace, no gilded invitation was truly safe. Historians still argue whether the butler embellished his story or simply repeated what he'd seen, but does it matter? His words were enough to ignite ruin, and ruin seldom waits for truth to catch up. You imagine being one of those footmen, standing behind a chair at supper, forced to stare at wallpaper while every whispered deal, every nervous laugh, every slip of the tongue floats around you. The temptation to collect those words must have been unbearable. And why not? A well-timed leak to the press, or a carefully placed rumor at the market, could fetch more than a year's wages. Silence, it turns out, wasn't golden. It was negotiable. Picture now a scullery maid scrubbing dishes at dawn. Her hands raw, her apron damp, but her ears alive with the gossip she overheard when the master staggered home late. She repeats it under her breath like a lullaby, not realizing she's weaving herself into history's footnotes. Or the coachman tightening reins, muttering about who sat too close to whom on last night's ride. These were the news feeds of their age. Relentless, unfiltered, and entirely human. And yet, the greatest irony, these servants were invisible until they weren't. Their presence was so constant, so expected, that aristocrats often spoke as if no one else was there. A duke could confess his fears inches away from a valet, never considering that the valet might someday confess them louder. Nobility forgot the golden rule of gossip. Never underestimate the person holding your coat. Of course, not every servant betrayed. Many carried secrets to the grave, binding themselves with loyalty that bordered on tragic. Imagine a housekeeper watching her mistress crumble under scandal, knowing the truth that could have saved her, but choosing silence. Was it devotion? Was it fear? Or was it simply survival? You'll never know, and perhaps that's why the shadows feel heavier in these houses. The weight of words unsaid. Your footsteps echo as you move down a narrow corridor now, oil lamps flickering. You pass locked doors, keys jangling on a ring at a servant's hip. Those keys aren't just metal. They are permission, temptation, power. A door to the master's study, a drawer with letters never meant for sunlight, a wardrobe with costumes of sin and disguise. Every lock implies trust, and every key carries the possibility of betrayal. You pause. Behind you, faintly, there's the sound of laughter, followed by the hush of slippers retreating down the staircase. Someone heard something tonight. You don't know who, you don't know what, but you feel the ripple already spreading outward, like ink dropped into water. Tomorrow, perhaps, it will be the talk of a market stall. Next week, maybe, it will climb into the newspapers. Secrets don't walk alone. They are carried by quiet feet. So you stand in this dim passage, realizing the unsettling truth. The mighty feared duels, rival houses, foreign wars. But often, it was the servant at their elbow, the one refilling the glass or brushing the coat, who held the most dangerous weapon of all. A whisper. The fog seems thinner tonight, though the streets still cling to their secrets. You find yourself stepping from grime-dark alleys into a house that looks like it belongs to another world entirely. Heavy curtains hush the outside noise, and chandeliers drip with light like frozen waterfalls. The air is thick with perfume, cigar smoke, and the faint whisper of gossip that could ruin a man before breakfast. Here, in the polished drawing rooms of London, silence is an illusion. Every glance is loaded, every pause a negotiation. You sink into a velvet chair, though you can feel its softness is designed less for comfort and more to remind you that you don't quite belong. Around you, conversations curl like ribbons of smoke. A gentleman in a starched collar chuckles too loudly at a joke no one else finds funny. while a lady with diamonds at her throat pretends not to notice the way his hand hovers near hers. Across the room, a politician leans too close to a banker, voices low, as if the fate of nations could be traded like pocket change. The clink of glasses provides rhythm, punctuating secrets that never reach the newspapers. Everyone here is pretending not to care, pretending to be above it all, pretending not to be terrified of the one slip that could undo them. It's tempting to imagine that these rooms are just for laughter and polite society. But beneath the lace gloves and polished boots lies something far less delicate. Historians murmur that some of the fiercest political maneuvers of the Victorian age didn't happen in Parliament at all, but right here, beneath chandeliers and in whispers softer than a prayer. No one wrote it down, of course. But the world outside seemed to turn after every discreet party, as if London's destiny was being spun not in public chambers but in shadowy salons. And yes, sometimes the host's tea really was laced with something stronger, though no one admits it now. A footman glides past, offering silver trays of sugared fruits and crystal glasses of brandy. His eyes are blank, trained to disappear even as he stands in the center of power. You notice the tension in his jaw, the weariness beneath the uniform. Servants like him knew more than anyone who drank too much, who stumbled where they shouldn't, who slipped into back rooms when candles burned low. Yet they carried their knowledge like invisible chains. One whisper could have bought freedom, perhaps, but it could just as easily have bought ruin. And so the silence of servants became the glue that kept these illusions intact. But don't be fooled into thinking this was only a game of politics. Behind these polished doors bloomed affairs that toppled reputations, trysts that fueled poems, and scandals so delicate that even now, historians hesitate to press too close. Still, a tantalizing rumor drifts through the years, that some of the more celebrated marriages were forged not in love, but in blackmail. Was it true? No one can be sure. The record books are clean, scrubbed neat as a Sunday table. Yet the scratches remain if you look closely enough. You shift in your seat, noticing how the velvet presses against your skin, as if the chair itself wants to remind you that you are complicit. Every nod, every polite smile, every time you pretend you don't notice the affair playing out 2 seats away, you're part of it now. The warmth of the room feels almost suffocating, as though the laughter and whispers are a net tightening around you. And maybe that's the point. Drawing rooms were never neutral. They pulled you in, softened your edges, and turned your silence into someone else's weapon. What's almost funny is how fragile it all looks. The jewels glitter, the porcelain gleams, the music hums softly from a hired quartet, and yet the entire structure balances on secrets. One word, one careless letter left on a desk, one servant with a loose tongue, and the glittering house collapses. It's a strange kind of architecture, built less of brick and mortar and more of deceit layered as carefully as plaster. You can feel it pressing on your lungs as you breathe in the perfumed air. And if you lean in closer, you might hear something else, the quiet hum of fear. It runs beneath the laughter like a second melody, one only the attuned can hear. Fear that the scandal papers might discover too much. Fear that the past might slip free. Fear that all this grandeur is only borrowed time. Even now, the very idea that these whispers could have dictated wars or crowned fortunes feels almost unbelievable. Almost you blink, and the candles gutter slightly, shadows stretching across the walls like fingers. The air feels heavier now, thick with implication. Every word spoken here tonight carries weight far beyond the walls. And whether you like it or not, you've become part of the story. your silence tucked into the folds of velvet and smoke. The streets outside may stink of coal, dust, and hunger, but in here, the filth is polished, perfumed, and dressed in silk. And you can't help but wonder which is more dangerous, the darkness you see openly in the alleys, or the darkness that smiles at you across crystal glasses. The night stretches on, and you realize that while the fog of London hides the city, it is these rooms that truly blind you. You rise, moving slowly, the hush of the carpet muffling your steps, and for a moment you almost feel free. But the whispers trail after you, soft as breath, wrapping around your ankles like chains you can't quite shake. And when the door finally opens to release you back into the cold air, the city's noise feels almost like a relief. Almost, shall I carry us straight into the next descent where gardens bloom not with flowers, but with distractions far more dangerous, keeping the same soft, tangled thread. The night air hits your face like a splash of cold water, and for a moment you almost breathe freely. But London does not let go so easily. Lanterns bob in the distance, leading you along paths that should feel harmless sparks where people stroll, where music drifts faintly, where laughter rolls like a tide. Yet the closer you walk, the more you sense the strangeness of it all, because these are not parks at all, not really. They are pleasure gardens, and their blossoms are not roses but illusions. You step beneath an arch of wrought iron, and suddenly the world shifts. Torches flare, fireworks pop against the dark, and the air swells with the scent of roasted chestnuts, spilled ale, and perfumes too thick to be entirely pleasant. A crowd gathers, restless as waves, voices rising in cheers and sighs. You are no longer in the cold, soot-smeared city. You are in a theatre without walls, where everyone has come to forget who they are. A fiddler scrapes out a tune, quick and wild, while dancers whirl with skirts flashing like banners. Beside you, a woman in a mask leans closer than propriety allows, her laughter sharp as glass. She doesn't ask your name, and you realize it doesn't matter. Here, anonymity is the currency. You could be anyone, merchant, thief, lord, servant, and the night would accept you just the same. For a few hours, rank melts away like sugar on the tongue. Even Queen Victoria herself once visited Vauxhall Gardens, though she was hardly disguised. The irony, of course, is that while these places promised escape, they were also the best hunting grounds for gossip. The deeper you wander, the stranger it grows. Tents glow like lanterns, offering games of chance, shadow puppet shows, and fortune-tellers whose eyes seem to pierce straight through your bones. You laugh softly, uneasily, when one whispers that your future holds both riches and ruin. A cheap trick surely, but the way her words linger makes you wonder. Historians still wonder, too, if those fortune-tellers were truly harmless entertainers, or if they held a sharper edge. Some accounts even suggest that a coded message might slip between palm readings, carrying secrets across the city faster than any official courier. And then there are the fireworks suit, deafening, tearing the night sky open with sparks that rain down like stars within reach. The crowd gasps, cheers, drinks harder, kisses strangers under the glow. For a moment, you're swept up in it too, the warmth of bodies pressed close, the dizzying blur of color and sound. But then you notice something: the way certain gentlemen slip away from the crowds, cloaks drawn tight, disappearing into shadowed arbors. The pleasure gardens weren't just for play. They were also for deals struck in whispers, for envelopes passed hand to hand, for lovers stolen from the gaze of society. You pause near a reflecting pool, its surface trembling with firelight. A drunk stumbles past, singing about love as though the word itself might keep him upright. Behind him, two boys dart between legs, hands quick as sparrows as they lift purses and vanish into the crowd. The gardens promise delight, yes, but also danger: pickpockets, cut purses, the occasional body fished from the water come morning. Police patrolled, of course, but their eyes often wandered toward the same temptations as everyone else. What unsettles you most, perhaps, is the contrast. By day, London preached morality, sermons, rules, the endless weight of respectability. But by night, under lanterns and fireworks, all those rules burned away. A lord who thundered against vice in Parliament could be found arm in arm with a dancer here, his laughter louder than the fiddler's bow. And maybe that was the true allure. The gardens offered not just escape, but contradiction. They let you live the life you couldn't admit you wanted, and yet, like all illusions, dawn would eventually come. Already you feel the edges of fatigue in the crowd, laughter slurring into yawns, music fraying as fiddlers tire. The torches burn lower, and shadows reclaim the paths. You realize that tomorrow these same men and women will rise again, starch their collars, lace their corsets, and pretend none of this ever happened. But you know better. You've seen the truth blooming here like night flowers wild, dangerous and unforgettable. You turn from the reflecting pool, the smell of smoke and spilled wine still clinging to your clothes, and step toward the gate. Behind you, the last fireworks crackle, a bright death against a black sky. Ahead, London waits, darker and quieter, though never truly asleep. And in that uneasy stillness, you sense something sharper, waiting, because where pleasure gardens offered illusions, the city's alleys and courts dealt in reality, and reality was rarely kind. Shall I carry us seamlessly into that harsher truth, the part where joy vanishes, and punishment sharpens its teeth? The fireworks fade into memory, yet your ears still ring with their echo. You walk back into the narrower streets, where the gaslight burns low, and London exhales a different breath, quieter, heavier, as if the night itself is tired of keeping so many secrets. You've witnessed the masks, the whispers, the bargains wrapped in gold, the pleasures sharpened into weapons. And now, at last, comes the moment when everything unravels, because masks never last forever. One crack, one slip, and all that careful paint flakes away. The nobleman who laughed too loudly in the gardens is now whispered about in houses, his scandal carried like a torch from mouth to mouth. The dancer who held his arms so tightly finds herself cast aside, a name no longer spoken. Even the most carefully guarded letters, burned, buried, sworn to secrecy, somehow find their way into daylight. And when they do, reputations collapse like paper houses in the rain. It is almost cruel, isn't it? The city that offered anonymity by night seems to hunger for exposure by day. Every story must come out, every mask must break, every illusion must be pierced. You almost pity them. These players on the endless stage of London. Almost, because even pity cannot silence the fascination you feel. Each shattered secret is another spark, another scandal to feed the fire. And still, the echoes refuse to die. Long after the affair is over, long after the whispers quiet, long after the headlines fade, something lingers. A shadow in the corridor, a glance that cannot be explained, a name half erased from a diary. You realize that history itself is just a tapestry of echoes, some loud, some faint, all refusing to disappear completely. Even now, As you stand in the silent street, you hear them. Laughter behind masks. Pens scratching words that should never have been written. Silk curtains shifting with the weight of someone listening. Gold clinking in a trembling hand. Steps of a servant too quick to be innocent. Breathless sighs twisted into bargains. The fragments return, relentless. And though the scandals themselves may have rotted, their ghosts remain. And perhaps that is the true scandal that the city never truly forgets. It carries the weight of every secret, every betrayal, every pleasure disguised as power. The echoes wrap around you, pressing closer until even the night feels crowded. You try to exhale, slow and steady, as if the breath alone could quiet them. It doesn't, so you let them stay. You let the whispers coil like smoke, the laughter blur like distant bells. And as your eyes grow heavy, you realize that sleep itself is just another masker, softer one that shields you from the sharpness of memory. You welcome it, slowly, carefully, as if stepping once more into the gardens, but this time without fear of being caught. The scandal fades, the city exhales, and you, at last, let go. End of script. Sweet dreams,